My fiancé and my brother both fell for the new impoverished student, Rose. One of them broke off our engagement and said, "Katarina, a highborn lady like you is too much for me to handle." The other one, forgetting our mother's dying wish, said, "Rose is so pitiful. I'll share half of the love I've given you with her. Is that too much?" On my birthday, my fiancé chose to spend time with Rose. On the anniversary of our mother's passing, my brother happily celebrated with Rose and her mother. When they accompanied Rose to Hong Kong to receive a design award, I burned down the house where our memories as three were kept. I faked my death and left the capital. But when news of my death reached Hong Kong, the two men who had long since abandoned me went mad and rushed back to Beijing overnight. They kneeled in front of the burned house, crying uncontrollably. Chapter 1. I brought up our engagement to Jacob Fu for the last time. The room fell silent at first. Then, seeing Jacob's impatient expression, the others immediately burst into laughter. What era is this? There's still such a futile practice as arranged marriages for children? That's such a futile custom. Our Miss Lee is usually so proud. Is she finally feeling threatened? I ignored the noisy laughter and chaos. I simply gazed at Jacob, who was sitting on the sofa. His shirt collar was slightly open, revealing faint marks on his neck and collarbone. My heart felt like it was pricked by a very fine needle. The pain was almost an afterthought. At that time, I was young and naive. That's why I agreed to such a ridiculous thing. Jacob said. He lifted his eyes to meet mine, the smile on his lips faint and mocking. He looked at me lazily, saying, "Katarina, we're grown now. Let's forget about the childish things from the past." I stared at him blankly, about to say something, when the door to the room was suddenly pushed open. Rose, wearing a waitress uniform, walked in holding a tray. She shrank back upon seeing me and mumbled softly, "Sister." "No. I mean, Miss Lee." Then, she quickly glanced at Jacob, eyes welling up with tears. I am sorry. Did I interrupt something?" Rose stammered, her voice trembling, as she tried to set the tray down and leave. But Jacob suddenly lifted his foot and kicked over the coffee table. The wine glasses shattered, glass shards scattering everywhere. I felt a sharp pain as my arm was cut by the broken glass, blood spilling out. Yet Jacob didn't even spare me a glance. With a grim expression, he walked over to Rose. He raised his hand and roughly ripped off her apron, which had a frilled design on it. "Rose, have I told you not to work anymore?" Rose quickly nodded obediently, but with tears welling up in her eyes. She hesitated and said softly, "I just don't want to always rely on your money. You and Luis have already given me so much. I can work too and earn my own living expenses. But it hurts me." Jacob threw the apron aside. "Come with me now, and don't let me see you working again in the future. If I find out you're working somewhere, I'll make sure to destroy that place." At this point, he suddenly turned and looked at me, "And anyone who tries to bully others using their position, don't blame me for not showing mercy." I held my bleeding arm, expressionless as I met his gaze amidst the chaotic room. Chapter 2. This club is a property under the Lee family. Jacob thought that Rose working here was me deliberately bullying her. But the ridiculous thing is, Rose is now being treated like a precious princess by him and my brother. She already has endless money, so how could she come here to work? But I also know very well, even if I were to explain, even if I brought in the head of the staff to testify, Jacob wouldn't believe it. In his eyes, I am now the villainous female lead. The character who uses her family background to bully the helpless. The one who does no good at all. Katarina. Jacob pulled Rose into his arms, protecting her. "A lady like you, I'm not worthy of. As for our engagement, let's forget it." After Jacob said this, the room fell into a heavy silence once again. Rose's pale face trembled as she burrowed into Jacob's chest. The few friends around them looked at me warily. I suddenly found it quite amusing. Indeed, since Rose's mother intervened in our family, and Rose stepped between Jacob and me, I had reacted. I had thrown tantrums. After all, the love that once belonged only to me began to shift, unconditionally, toward Rose and her mother. How could I, the pampered young lady, tolerate this? But no matter how much I cried or caused a scene, The result was that everyone around me was pushed closer to Rose. And now, I was so tired, so weary. Fine. I nodded calmly. Slowly. I took a few steps forward. Jacob instinctively moved to shield Rose behind him. Katarina, if you want to do something, come at me. I loosened my hand from where I had been holding the wound, letting it fall open. My snow-white palm was stained with a patch of blood. Jacob's lips pressed together, and in his eyes, the coldness seemed to waver, just slightly. Chapter 3. But at that moment, Rose suddenly broke free from his embrace. Miss Lee, please don't make things difficult for the senior. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have appeared. Shouldn't have disturbed you. As she spoke, her tears fell at the right moment. I'll leave right now. Rose. I told you. I've got your back. Jacob instantly felt pained, wiping away her tears as he looked back at me. The softening in his eyes was now completely gone. What replaced it was disdain. Katarina, can't you just stop being so stubborn? I interrupted him directly. You can break off the engagement, but give me my things back. Jacob froze for a moment. What things? I raised my hand and untied the red string around my neck. Hanging from the red string was a jade pendant. It was the heirloom Jacob's mother had given me when the engagement was arranged between our families. My mother had given him something even more valuable. It was an artifact from the ancient court, blessed by a high monk of the Tang dynasty. Give me the jade pendant back, and my bracelet as well. Jacob's face gradually froze. His gaze fell on the jade pendant in my hand. I had treasured it since I was 15, and it had never left my side. How much I cherished it was something everyone in our circle knew. You think everyone is like you, holding on to such worthless things? Jacob snatched the jade pendant from my hand. Such a worthless thing. Always hanging around. Can't bear to part with it. He gave me one last cold glance. I'll bring it home and give it to you. Then we'll be square. When I returned home, my brother Luis was waiting for me in the living room. Katarina, there's something I need to tell you. He handed me a few thick stacks of documents. I'm planning to transfer this office building to Rose's name so she can collect the rent. She's been through a lot, and now that she's part of our family, she deserves to enjoy the fruits of it. I glanced at the documents. The building was part of my mother's inheritance, property she brought from her family. I expressionlessly took the documents and tore them up. Katarina, what do you mean by this? Luis adjusted his glasses, looking at me disapprovingly. I've already taken care of the incident where you pushed Rose down the stairs last time. Rose has suffered so much. Even giving her a building isn't a big deal. Don't you remember what Mom said on her deathbed? Luis fell silent at once. Before she passed, our mother had held my brother's hand tightly and made him swear. She made him swear to protect me for life, to care for me, and to love me, to never let anyone wrong me, and to never let anyone take anything that belonged to me. I haven't forgotten. But Katarina, since Rose is now my sister too, is it really so wrong for me to share the love I have for you with her? Katarina, you're too spoiled, too willful. Luis sighed lightly. Why can't you learn a bit from Rose? Chapter 4. I wanted to laugh, but the tears were already overflowing. Luis, don't think anyone can take anything that belongs to Mom. If you want to give Rose anything, fine, but anything from the Lee family, give as much as you want. There's nothing good in the Lee family anyway. Luis suddenly fell silent. Yes. What is there good in the Lee family? From people to things, there is nothing good at all. I threw the torn-up documents into the trash can and turned to go upstairs. A few days from now is Mom's anniversary. Don't forget. How could I forget? Luis smiled awkwardly. Get some rest. I'm going to work in the study. I didn't respond, nor did I turn back. That night, I didn't sleep. I gathered all the things in the house related to the three of us. I burned the photos, anything that could be broken or torn apart. I broke or tore, things that could be donated. I packed up and sent to the welfare home. The rest, all that remained was this house full of memories. This was the only small villa the Lee family had when Mom married in. Later, when Mom passed away, neither my brother nor I could bear to move out. Eventually, Dad moved out to live with Rose's mother. My brother also gradually stopped coming back here. Jacob used to come here every day to spend time with me. But now, It had been a long time since he came. I sat on the balcony, holding Mom's portrait. I cried for a long time before finally falling asleep in my tears. The day after my birthday was Mom's anniversary. Back then, Mom had held on until after my birthday to pass away. I had cried uncontrollably. Jacob stayed by my side, never once taking his eyes off me. For 24 hours straight, he stayed with me through the following 8 birthdays. This was the first time he wasn't there. But it didn't matter anymore. But Jacob didn't come. Rose, however, wouldn't leave me alone. Her WeChat moments spammed my feed all night long. Some well-meaning person even live-streamed the whole evening to me. I couldn't find a reason to celebrate. So the senior said we could just celebrate with your tablet tonight. Actually, it's just an excuse to eat cake. A beautiful, expensive 2-layer cake. Champagne tower. The little princess with a crown surrounded by handbags and pretty clothes. Smiling, her eyes sparkling, gazing lovingly at the person next to her. Jacob smiled gently at her. They were so well matched. I exited WeChat and put my phone face down on the table. I closed my eyes and made a wish in front of the candle. Mom, please bless me. Let everything go smoothly. Mom, please protect me. Keep me far away from these awful people forever. Chapter 5. On the anniversary of Mom's death, I waited for a long time. Dad sent over some offerings, but Luis didn't show up. I called him 3 times, but no one picked up. The 4th time, Rose's mother answered. It's Katarina, right? Are you looking for Luis? Today is my mom's anniversary. Aw, it's your sister's anniversary? Look at us. We really should have remembered. My little dog just gave birth, and Luis and Rose are so excited they forgot all about it. I'm afraid it's too late to go over now. What should we do? Aunt, whose call is it? It's Katarina's. She seems angry. What should we do? Luis? Hello, Katarina? Luis's voice finally came through. I immediately hung up and blocked his number. On the tombstone, Mom smiled at me from her black and white photo. Her smile was full of love and warmth. It was the springtime of the world. I knelt on the ground, but it felt as though I had fallen into an icy abyss. I hugged Mom's portrait and kissed it. It's okay. At least I'm here, and I'll never forget Mom. After returning from the lawyer, just as I came back to the small house, I unexpectedly saw Jacob with the other 2. Rose was in the middle, surrounded by them. She held a huge bouquet of flowers, clearly overjoyed. When they saw me, Luis was the first to speak. Katarina, look how great Rose is. Her design draft won an international award. She just wants to follow in her sister's footsteps. Rose acted all shy and humble. Jacob, holding the design draft, scoffed. Follow in her footsteps? She studied with a famous teacher and still couldn't win a single award. This thing, it's all about talent. Rose, don't sell yourself short. My gaze suddenly fixed on the lines of the design draft. I couldn't help but take a few steps forward and snatch it from Jacob's hand. One sheet after another, all nearly identical to my own sketches. Rose had stolen my drafts to win that award. You stole my design drafts. Rose, how can you be so shameless? I trembled with anger, unable to stop myself from raising my hand to slap her. But just as my hand was lifted, Jacob grabbed my wrist tightly. Then, with a violent force, he pushed me down. I fell to the ground, landing in a heap, my body a mess. Chapter 6. Katarina, you've been willful and overbearing since you were a child. I've tolerated it for a long time. Rose won the award based on her own abilities. You say she stole your design drafts. Do you have proof? If you can't produce it, you're just slandering her. Sister, I really didn't steal your design drafts. You've always hated me. How could I have had a chance to get close to your computer? Rose cried out, collapsing into Jacob's arms. I suddenly looked at Luis. My computer had always been kept in the study. The only one who often went to the study was him. Yet, Luis turned his gaze away uneasily. At this point, what was there for me to not understand? Katarina, look at what you've become. Jacob looked down at me from above. He tossed the red bracelet casually toward me, and it fell beside me on the floor. I really don't understand why I liked you in the first place. I lifted my head in mockery. about to speak, but my eyes were drawn to the necklace around Rose's neck. When I saw it clearly, I was instantly filled with rage, my body trembling. It was a tulip-shaped diamond necklace, one that Mom had left for me. Luis, how dare you give Mom's necklace to her? I pointed at Rose, my eyes red with fury. Luis tightly pressed his lips together, seemingly uneasy. Katarina. Rose had already lowered her head, tears welling in her eyes as she reached for the necklace. Sister, I'm sorry. I didn't know this was Aunt's heirloom. I'll give it back to you right now. She said this while tears dripped down her face. Luis immediately felt sorry for her. Rose, you don't need to take it off. This is a gift I gave to you. Then, he turned to me. A necklace is just an object. Rose likes it, so let her have it. I'll buy a better one for you. The pain in my heart was like a slow torture, and my voice shook. This is the necklace Mom left for me. Luis, you have no right to decide. Besides, even if I threw it away or broke it, there's no way I'd let the mistress's daughter take it. A flash of anger crossed Luis's face. Katarina, stop being so malicious toward Rose. Adult grudges have nothing to do with her. Rose covered her face and sobbed. Jacob stepped forward and protected her, holding her close. Katarina, don't go too far. Besides, it's just a worthless necklace. Rose, we'll get you a new one. He yanked the necklace off and threw it to the ground. Let's go. I'll buy you a better, more expensive one right now. Luis shot me a glance and sighed. Katarina, why do you always act so childish, causing all this trouble? Rose is so pitiful, yet you can't even accept her. You're a girl, why can't you learn to be kinder? And as for the design drafts, Katarina, you've already received enough. You'll have plenty of chances to win a big award in the future. But Rose is different. She needs this award to gain recognition and stand her ground in the industry, so she can be slowly accepted by the Fu family. He tried to pull me up. Katarina, leave. I pushed his hand away, suddenly laughing. Brother, this was the last time I called him that, and the last time I looked at him seriously. You will get what you deserve. Luis furrowed his brows, but he didn't dare to look me in the eye. Katarina, I'll make it up to you in the future. After saying that, he hurried off toward Jacob and Rose's direction. I squatted down, picked up the necklace, and pressed it against my chest, standing motionless for a long while. I didn't cry. Not a single tear fell. It turned out that when the sorrow and pain reached their peak, not even a single tear could fall. The sunset sank, and everything was swallowed by the blood-red sky. The weather forecast said the temperature would rise for several days. It was dry, so one had to be careful with fire. Late at night, I threw the thick letters into the fire and picked up the photos. Jacob and Luis stood beside me, each smiling brightly, but looking at them now, all I could feel was irony and laughter. The photos were all burned, and the smiles gradually disappeared, turning to ash. My eyes were filled with the firelight. As the photos burned, I caught glimpses of the letters' content. My brother had written, I will always love and protect my sister. Let Katarina be a little princess forever. Jacob had written, when I grow up, I'll marry Katarina and make her my wife. We'll have 2 babies, one will be a boy, and the other will be a girl. They had both made serious promises to me. They had both said that I was more important than their own lives. But now, the letters had yellowed with age. The black ink had started to fade. I didn't know when. Just like those ridiculous vows, they would eventually disappear with the wind. The letters burned down to nothing, and the heat of the flames scorched my fingers. I let go of the papers, allowing them to fall onto the gown on the ground. The flames grew higher, lighting up the curtains and the wooden box, with thick smoke pouring out of the windows. I stood in place, my face flushed from the heat, my eyes glistening with tears from the smoke. Suddenly, Jacob called me. I didn't pick up. Soon after, Luis called again. I still hung up. As I was about to delete and block their numbers, Jacob sent me a WeChat message. Katarina, no matter what, Rose is still your sister. I hope that at the important moments of her life, you can congratulate her. She really hopes to receive your blessing. Tomorrow, I'll buy some jewelry that you like and bring it to you. Don't be so willful from now on. Luis's message came shortly after. Katarina, I promise you, I'll make it up to you in the future. As for Mom's necklace, I'll get one exactly the same for you. Can you forgive me?" I really wanted to laugh. And finally, I couldn't stop myself from laughing through my tears. I replied to both messages. To Jacob, "I won't bless her. I'll only curse both her and her mother to hell." To Luis, "Why don't you go to hell and ask Mom to forgive you?" After sending the messages, I blocked and deleted all their contact information. I grabbed my suitcase and gave the house, filled with memories, one last look before turning and leaving without looking back. Everything that needed to be dealt with was done. There was nothing left for me to hold on to. Not long after I left, the burning candle was knocked over by the night wind. At first, it was just a small flame, but the dry air fueled the fire, and it grew larger, until the flames devoured the entire villa. The house, which had carried so many memories, turned into a pile of ruins. Chapter 7. Rose, dressed in a high-fashion gown, stood waiting at the side of the stage, ready to accept her award. Jacob's phone rang at that moment. Annoyed, he took it out, planning to silence it, but he inadvertently saw a message pop up on the screen. "Jacob, call back urgently. Katarina is in trouble." Jacob scoffed, thinking of the message Katarina had sent earlier. He became even more repulsed. He nonchalantly replied, "What trick is she pulling this time?" Rose was just about to go on stage. Jacob had no time or energy to deal with Katarina. If something was going on, it was only an attempt to ruin Rose's moment. Soon, his friend's call came through. Annoyed, he quickly hung up. Rose looked over nervously. "Senior, I'm a little nervous." Jacob took her hand reassuringly. "Relax. I'll be here with you." The announcer called Rose's name. Jacob bent down to lift the hem of her gown. The spotlight shone on her. At this moment, she was the center of attention. Rose took a deep breath, put on a light smile, and began walking towards the stage. Her phone rang again. Jacob picked it up. On the other end, his friend's panicked voice came through. "Jacob, Katarina is in trouble. Last night, a fire broke out at the Lee family villa. By the time they found it, the house had been reduced to rubble. Katarina was inside the house and didn't come out. The police said things looked grim." Jacob sneered upon hearing this. "Don't think I don't know what she's up to. Tell Katarina to stop wasting her time." Before his friend could say anything else, Jacob hung up. To avoid any further hassle, he just turned off his phone. Just as he put his phone away, Luis's phone rang. It was the same friend calling. Luis was about to answer, but Jacob quickly pressed the button to end the call. "It's Katarina causing trouble again. Don't pay any attention to her. Rose's award ceremony is more important." Luis furrowed his brow. "What's she up to this time?" "What else? Stirring up trouble, trying to get us to come back. She doesn't want us to see Rose accept her award. She just wants to make Rose upset." Luis's frown deepened, and he turned off his phone. "She's becoming more and more unreasonable. Katarina's too arrogant. It's time we taught her a lesson." Jacob sneered. "I couldn't agree more." The applause on stage grew louder, and Jacob and Luis clapped along, their eyes fixed on the graceful figure. Rose, too, smiled sweetly as she looked back at them. "To receive this award, I must thank two people, my senior and my brother. If it weren't for them, I wouldn't be where I am today. Thank you both." Jacob and Luis shared a soft look, both their faces filled with tenderness. Their eyes remained on Rose, unblinking, as if the person on stage was their entire world. The award ceremony ended smoothly. To celebrate Rose's victory, Jacob and Luis took her on a shopping trip and a vacation. On the way to their vacation spot, Rose asked about the phone calls during the award ceremony. "Did my sister call you guys? I think I heard her name just before I went on stage." "Don't worry about her. She's trying to pull the same stunt again, starting a fire to get attention." "Senior, don't say that," Rose softly retorted. "Sister just wants to get your attention. She didn't mean any harm. It's my fault. If you and my brother hadn't been with me, she wouldn't have come up with such a ridiculous plan. Why don't we go back and check on her? If she's angry and says something mean to me, I'll just pretend I didn't hear it." Rose's eyes were wet, like a docile kitten that had been wronged. Jacob, feeling sorry for her, pulled Rose into his arms. Rose, you're just too kind. That's why she's always bullying you. Luis echoed. Don't blame yourself, Rose. She's the one who's unreasonable. Just as they finished speaking, Luis's phone rang. It was the same police officer from Beijing, asking if Luis was Katarina's relative. Before Luis could respond, Jacob sneered. A police officer? Katarina is bold, trying to trick us with a fake cop. My badge number is 010XXXX. We received a report in the early hours about a fire at a villa in the southern part of the city. Surveillance footage shows that Ms. Lee returned to the villa, but she didn't leave until the house was completely destroyed. Due to the severity of the fire, only some items that likely belonged to Ms. Lee were found. Jacob's face twisted into an even more mocking smile. Playing dead? Tell Katarina her little act won't work. She should just give up. Jacob grabbed Luis's phone and blocked the number. There was no way someone like Katarina would just die so easily. Their private jet landed on an island with a pleasant climate. This island belonged to Jacob. Everything was set up according to Rose's preferences. In the afternoon, while accompanying Rose on a fishing trip, Jacob casually scrolled through his phone. He came across a news article from Beijing. The headline read, "A fire broke out at a villa in the southern part of the city." The house had been reduced to ruins by the time firefighters arrived. No bodies were found on the scene due to the severity of the fire. Surveillance footage showed that no one left the villa. Police have determined that the people inside are likely dead. Jacob's fingers momentarily paused as he scrolled past the article, lost in thought for a brief moment. Jacob, smile for the camera. Rose, holding a selfie stick, leaned close to him. A faint scent of jasmine filled the air, and Jacob instinctively draped his arm over Rose's shoulder, posing for the photo. This picture's nice, don't you think? Rose asked. Looking up at him, her soft lips accidentally brushed against Jacob's chin. The atmosphere became more intimate, and the two kissed, the mood growing increasingly charged. On the villa's terrace, Luis stood holding his phone, his mind conflicted. After a long moment of hesitation, he finally dialed Katarina's number. Hello, the number you have dialed is currently in use. Please try again later. Luis dialed twice before realizing he had been blocked by Katarina. Angry, Luis slammed his phone onto the table. But there was a strange sense of unease gnawing at him. He thought of the missed calls, the news. The unease in his heart only grew stronger. But then he remembered all the trouble Katarina had caused recently, and that fire. His face darkened again. It was time to teach her a lesson. Otherwise, she would only get more out of control. Chapter 8. A week later, after finishing their vacation and shopping, the group returned to Beijing. Jacob couldn't wait to take Rose back to the Fu family home. Mrs. Fu sat in the elegantly decorated hall, not acknowledging Rose's greeting, her face full of disappointment as she looked at Jacob. I didn't raise you well. Katarina's been in trouble for just a few days, and you're already bringing her father's illegitimate daughter in front of me. She's been like a sister to you. How could you be so heartless? Mrs. Fu and Katarina's mother had always been close, and after Lee's mother passed, Mrs. Fu had treated Katarina as her own daughter. Jacob, noticing Rose's reddened eyes, gave her a comforting look but calmly retorted, Mom, you've been fooled by Katarina. She set the house on fire just to get attention. Someone like her, so arrogant and domineering, would never let herself die. Mrs. Fu stared at him for a few seconds before shaking her head with a sigh. If you don't believe me, you should at least believe the police. You and Luis should go to the station and claim Katarina's belongings. Then you'll know whether Katarina was lying to you. Jacob's expression changed, but his tone remained firm. No way. Katarina set the fire to lure us back. Rose softly interjected. Aunt, you misunderstood. Jacob doesn't believe it because Katarina's tricked him before. If it's true, you'll know for yourself. Mrs. Fu replied. Jacob's chest heaved in frustration, and he nodded. Fine, I'll go. Let's see what new stunt she's pulling. He turned and stormed out, but he forgot about Rose. Only when Rose, panting heavily, chased after him did Jacob stop in his tracks. For some reason, a feeling of dread crept into his heart, suffocating him. In the car, Jacob's face darkened like a storm was brewing. Sorry, The number you dialed is temporarily unavailable. Please try again later. 3 times. The same message. Jacob dialed Luis's number. No answer. Rose, noticing that Jacob didn't spare a glance in her direction, lightly rubbed her arm, wincing in discomfort. Jacob showed no response. After 2 more failed attempts, Jacob's irritation grew, his anger seeping into his voice. Drive faster. The driver responded, stepping on the gas. Rose cautiously tugged at his sleeve. Jacob, don't be like this. I'm scared. If it were in the past, Jacob would have softened, pulling her into his arms and comforting her. But now, he merely glanced at her, frowning slightly. A heavy sense of unease gnawed at him. But Rose's soft voice broke through his thoughts. Jacob, do you think something really happened to my sister? She's always so delicate and afraid of pain. Jacob coldly scoffed. You're right. She's fragile and afraid of pain. So this time, she's definitely just pulling another stunt. Rose leaned into his arms, her voice quiet and tender. Sister just cares too much about you both. That's why she lost her head. Don't be mad at her. It's my fault. I can't make her like me. But Jacob didn't respond. His face remained stoic, as if an impending storm was about to break. Rose's heart sank, and she dared not speak further. The car turned the final corner, and they arrived at the southern villa district. Jacob stepped out in disbelief. It was the same familiar place, but now, it was nothing but a pile of rubble. It was clear the fire had raged for a long time, and many things had been reduced to ashes. The remnants had been doused with water, some of which seeped into the charred ground. Amidst the wreckage, Luis was kneeling, his hands hanging limply by his sides, blood dripping from them. Jacob suddenly remembered the news he saw on the cruise ship. It was all true. The call from the police, his friend's words, everything. Jacob staggered forward, his face pale as he softly murmured, "What happened? Why? After just a few days, has it turned into this?" Katarina wasn't lying. The house really did burn down. Luis suddenly stood up, his eyes bloodshot. He swung his fist hard, striking Jacob in the face. Jacob was caught off guard, falling heavily to the ground. Rose screamed, rushing forward to help, but Jacob shoved her away, and the 2 men began to fight. Soon, both of them were battered and bruised. It wasn't until they were exhausted that others stepped in to separate them. Luis collapsed to the ground, his face ashen. Why did I believe your lies? If I had answered the phone that day, if I had trusted her and come back sooner. No, Katarina must still be in there. I have to dig her out. Like a man possessed, Luis crawled toward the wreckage, digging frantically. Their friends tried to stop him, but Luis didn't listen. Jacob wiped the blood from his face and stood up, walking away. Didn't they say they didn't find any bodies? Katarina must still be alive. She's just angry. She set the fire to make us think she's dead. Luis's defeated eyes suddenly gleamed with hope. Yes, you're right. Katarina is alive. I'll send people to find her right now. With renewed determination, he scrambled to his feet and stumbled away. Jacob, brother, Rose, frantic, tried to follow, but she misstepped and fell heavily onto the scorched rubble. Luis didn't seem to hear her cries. Jacob didn't stop either. He instructed his assistant to take Rose to the hospital and left without a second glance. The 2 cars sped off, disappearing into the distance. Jacob and Luis arrived at the police station one after the other. Luis identified himself and requested to see the surveillance footage. After watching it, the young officer brought out Katarina's belongings. The footage shows that Ms. Lee hasn't left the villa since she returned, and it's highly likely she perished in the fire. These items were found at the scene. Inside a transparent plastic bag was a diamond and a severely burned red bracelet. The diamond was identical to the one on Katarina's mother's necklace. Luis's face drained of color as he recognized it. This is Katarina's most treasured bracelet and diamond necklace. Luis mumbled, his voice hoarse as if a lump of cotton had lodged in his throat, making every word painful. His chest felt like hands were tearing at his heart, and the pain was unbearable. An overwhelming sense of regret flooded over him, drowning him completely. Jacob felt as though the world was spinning, and his vision blurred, nearly making him collapse. Just then, Rose arrived, And seeing Jacob state, her heart sank. Jacob, what happened to my sister? Before she could finish, Jacob suddenly turned, his eyes locking onto hers with a look of pure fury. Rose flinched, her voice trembling. Jacob, what's wrong? His eyes were bloodshot, and his voice low and rasping. It's all because of you. Katarina wanted to kill herself because of you. When it was just the three of us, everything was fine. You, this bitch, caused trouble between us. And that's why I misunderstood Katarina. Rose, I won't forgive you. Jacob, I know you're sad about my sister's death. Rose began, her eyes red with tears. But before she could finish, Jacob shoved her aside. Screw off! Rose looked at Luis, hoping for support, but Luis just coldly turned away. Rose sat down, her heart freezing in despair. Chapter 9. I settled in a small country in the West. Life here moves at a very slow pace. Every day, I wake up naturally, go to the supermarket to buy groceries, and cook at home. After meals, I spend time sketching or working on design drafts, or simply engaging in whatever catches my interest. During my free time, I go for walks, clear my mind, and fully relax. Occasionally, news from home still reaches me. For example, my death was reported on the news. Another example, Jacob and Luis are relentlessly going after Rose and her mother, sparing no effort to ruin them. Luis exposed online that Rose's award-winning work had been plagiarized from his late sister, presenting a series of evidence. What was once a career boost for Rose, because of the award, turned into a disaster. She became a pariah, with everyone shunning her. Not only that, but Jacob and Luis also reclaimed all the expensive gifts they had ever given her. Rose's mother was revealed to be a mistress who had ruined someone else's marriage, and Rose herself was labeled as an illegitimate child. When I saw news related to them again, I felt nothing. My heart had gone cold. The sun rose, and bright sunlight bathed the earth. This was my new beginning. A month after settling here, I started looking for a job, with a new identity. 9 days later, I successfully joined a new company. My colleagues were mostly friendly and warm. My boss was a stylish, beautiful woman, and she helped me a lot in my work. Gradually, I found my place in the company. 2 years passed in the blink of an eye. I made new friends, and some even pursued me, but I had no intention of starting a relationship at the moment. I signed up for an international design competition, and I'm currently in the preliminary round. The competition would take place in another nearby country, and many people were paying attention to it. I had made extensive preparations for it. One day, my boss Linda informed me that the company was considering a partnership with a firm in Hong Kong, and they planned to send me on a business trip. Linda looked up from her computer. You're both from the same place, so it'll be easier to communicate. I tried to avoid the trip, but this is such an important project. How could I handle it? That country still had Jacob and Luis, and I didn't want to go anywhere near them, even if the trip was to Hong Kong, but I had to reject all chances of running into them. Linda gave me a reassuring smile. The business trip list has already been submitted, and I'll be going with you. Don't worry, everything will be fine. Reluctantly, I prepared for the trip. To ensure I wouldn't cross paths with them in Hong Kong, I logged into my WeChat account, which I hadn't used in a while, and entered a group chat. There were about 20 people in the group, usually quite lively. I wasn't interested in reading through all the posts about the group members' luxurious lifestyles, so I directly searched for their names. Over the past 2 years, Jacob had completely ruined Rose's reputation, but he didn't fare any better himself. A year and a half ago, Rose claimed to be pregnant with his child and cried to the media. Jacob was despised by his elders because of the scandal. Less than a month later, Rose fell at home and lost the baby. The two of them were then kicked out by the Lee family. Mother and daughter left Beijing and moved to a second-tier city, but with Jacob and Luis keeping an eye on them, their lives wouldn't be easy. From their conversation, I learned that Jacob was on a business trip in the Magic City, and Luis's whereabouts were unknown. There was no other useful information, so I logged out of WeChat. 5 days later, I flew to Hong Kong with Linda and 2 other colleagues. The business trip was scheduled for a week. And I hoped I wouldn't be so unlucky as to run into those two. Once in Hong Kong, I would stay indoors and only leave if absolutely necessary. The rest of the time, I would stay in the hotel, avoiding any encounters. The night before I was to leave, I attended a farewell banquet. The banquet was held at a famous club, and when I entered, I noticed someone was watching me. But when I looked around, I found no one. An uneasy feeling crept up my spine. During dinner, I excused myself to go to the bathroom, grabbed my bag, and prepared to slip away. To be cautious, I decided to leave through the back door. Hong Kong's traffic was heavy, so I waited under the shade of a tree for a ride. Suddenly, I heard hurried footsteps behind me. The sound of those footsteps was so familiar. I felt oddly calm inside, until the footsteps stopped behind me, and Jacob's trembling and cautious voice reached me. Katarina, is that you? I didn't turn around. I just lowered my head and continued to look at my phone. Jacob walked around to face me, his eyes wide with disbelief as he took a step closer. Katarina, I know it's you. I looked up with a puzzled expression. Sir, are you calling me? In the 2 years that had passed, I had cut my long hair into a shoulder-length bob. My style of dress was completely different. My makeup and aura had also changed. Jacob's eyes were tinged with a faint red. Katarina, I know you're still angry with me. It was Rose who deceived me, and that's why I hurt you. But I regret it now. Katarina, I really know I was wrong. Rose's tricks were not clever at all. In fact, they were rather childish. Yet he and Luis had believed them without hesitation. I had tried many times to mend our relationship, but every time, Jacob's actions became even more hurtful. The person I loved and my own brother had gradually become more biased toward Rose. Rose's mother was still the mistress who had ruined my mother's marriage. To me, Rose and her mother had always been strangers. What truly hurt me were Jacob and Luis. One was my childhood friend, and the other was my blood-related brother. The two people who meant so much to me were the ones who heartlessly wielded a dagger, stabbing at my most vulnerable points. They tore me apart, leaving me bleeding and broken. 2 years later, my wounds had healed, leaving scars behind. The pain was gone, and the people who had wounded me could no longer stir any emotions in me. Chapter 10. I called the police. It had been so long since we'd last met, and Jacob, as always, still had that confident air about him, though now he seemed utterly despondent. In my mind, I thought Jacob would be sad for a few days after losing me, but then he would go back to enjoying life with Rose. I didn't expect that I still meant something to him, but really, who cares? The police arrived quickly. This man has mistaken the person, and has been harassing her. I gave a helpless expression, showing my ID. My name is Fiona. I've always gone by that name. No, you're Katarina, not Fiona. We grew up together. I can't be mistaken, Jacob said, staring at the ID but refusing to believe it. Do you have any proof? I asked. Jacob was immediately speechless. I knew he didn't have a single photo of me, even the childhood pictures. I had personally gone to his mother to retrieve. Before leaving, I had burned every single photo, nothing left. I laughed lightly. See? You don't even have proof. You're just saying I'm someone you know. But who's going to believe you? Jacob's face darkened, and after a long silence, he spoke. Katarina, I know you resent me, but that's okay. I'll make it up to you. Little by little, the house will be rebuilt to its original state. I'll make sure it looks just the same. Whenever you have time, I'll take you to see it. I didn't want to listen to his nonsense. I asked the police to hold him back while I returned to the hotel. After explaining to Linda why I had to leave early, I opened the app to book the soonest flight back. The next morning at 8, I opened the door and, as expected, Jacob was waiting outside. His clothes were wrinkled, his chin covered with stubble, dark circles under his eyes. He clearly hadn't slept all night. When he saw me, he stood up straight against the wall, and his eyes lit up. Katarina, you're awake. I told you. I'm not Katarina, I said flatly. If you have time to bother me, you might as well go look for the real her. I walked straight past him, heading out, but Jacob followed. By noon, Rose and her mother will personally apologize to you. They had moved to a small city, but still couldn't escape Jacob's vengeance. With their savings running low, they had resorted to borrowing money online to survive. I ignored his words and went to join Linda and the others. Jacob followed me, keeping a reasonable distance. Who is that man? He's quite handsome, Linda asked. I glanced at my phone, replying casually, I don't know him. Before boarding, there was an issue with my ticket, and I couldn't board that flight. I felt no emotion. From what I knew about Jacob, he wouldn't just let me leave without doing something. I told Linda and the others to go on ahead while I stayed to deal with the situation. I grabbed my suitcase and scanned the airport hall, quickly spotting Jacob. He stood out in the crowd, his tall figure in a dark gray coat, waiting anxiously for me. I motioned for him to come over with a finger. Jacob smiled and quickly walked over. Katarina, you tampered with my ticket, I stated. Certain of it, Jacob admitted openly. Yes, I did. I can't just let you leave easily. I looked at him coldly. Do you know why I want to leave? Because you and Luis, to me, are already dead. Because you two are nothing but insignificant strangers now. Jacob began to panic. Katarina, I know I was wrong. I'll do everything to make it right. Please give me a chance. His voice was so humble, nothing like the arrogant young man he once was. No, you weren't deceived by Rose. You just thought that because I cared about you too, I would never leave. It's just that you both were so heartless, letting me twist and turn in pain every day, until I could completely strip my feelings for you both away. Jacob's face paled, and his eyes turned red. He opened his mouth to speak. Katarina, don't call me that. It only makes me sick. Jacob averted his gaze, almost stumbling. Luis is on his way. Could you meet him before you leave? No need, I refused coldly. I just want to leave, far away from both of you. I returned to the hotel, but Luis arrived before me. He held a stack of documents, his eyes red. Little sister, I've reclaimed everything I gave to Rose. It can be transferred to your name now. Just sign here. His hands trembled slightly as he handed me the papers. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just ask for a chance to make up for my mistakes. No matter how sincere his words were, I remained indifferent, not a flicker of emotion in my eyes. I had truly, completely let them go, even though the process of letting go had torn me apart, nearly costing me my life. No need. I looked at them. I won't forgive you, nor will I seek revenge. Luis. Jacob. I'm only saying this once. Don't try to make it up to me. I don't need it. And don't bother me again. Luis's pale lips moved, but he said nothing. He knew me well. If I had lashed out, screamed at him, or even hit him, there might have been room for reconciliation. But by staying so calm, not even uttering a single word of reproach, he understood that I would never look back. Rose and her mother were brought before me. I almost couldn't recognize the woman in front of me as Rose's mother. She was dressed in dark clothes, without makeup, her eyes deeply lined with wrinkles, her hair graying. She looked like she was in her 60s or 70s. Rose, too, looked exhausted, no longer the delicate beauty she once was. In less than 2 years, she had been tortured to this state. It was clear she had endured much hardship. I couldn't deny. Seeing them like this gave me some satisfaction, but with that satisfaction came a touch of sadness. How they had once adored Rose. Luis had even shown immense respect for Rose's mother. I had suffered so much because of their favoritism, their bias. But after I left, they quickly turned their wrath onto Rose and her mother. Their love and hatred, their likes and dislikes, were as cheap as I'd always suspected. I admitted it. I hated Rose and her mother. I despised them deeply, loathed them. But now, I loathed Jacob and Luis even more. If Rose and her mother were pure evil, pure malice, then Jacob and Luis were foolish and arrogantly blind in helping them. I didn't want to see Rose and her mother's miserable state anymore, and I didn't want to see either of them again. I turned my gaze away. The people you wanted me to meet are seen. Can I leave now? Luis stood frozen in place. Jacob signaled for them to take Rose and her mother away. He looked at me, a bitter smile on his face. Katarina, even if you hate me, resent me. I won't let you leave anymore. I was forced to stay. Still in the hotel. In the following days, both of them did everything they could to please me, but I no longer responded. I didn't even speak a single word. In the end, Luis gave in, and after talking to Jacob, they let me leave. On the 17th day in Hong Kong, I boarded the flight back home. I knew Jacob and Luis were probably on that plane too. After several hours, the plane landed. Back home, I slept peacefully. When I woke up, I found that the young couple next door had moved out and new neighbors had moved in. They moved so quickly that it was obvious my new neighbors were Jacob and Luis. Sure enough, in the following period, I kept running into them. One evening, after dinner, I saw Jacob standing under the streetlight, his figure solitary and desolate. When he saw me, he stood up straight and forced a smile. "Katarina, you're back." I ignored him and kept walking. He took a box out of his pocket and opened it. "I made this myself. You'll look beautiful wearing it." It was a gorgeous bracelet, encrusted with countless gems. His hands were full of scars. I gave it a passing glance, then turned away. "I don't want it. Katarina, what do you want from me to make it right?" Jacob's voice was desperate as he cried out behind me. I stopped, turned back to look at him disappear from my sight forever. "And I'll forgive you. Katarina, you're really cruel." I laughed softly, not looking back. Chapter 11. After that day, Jacob didn't show up in front of me for several days, and I was more than happy to enjoy the peace and quiet. I focused most of my attention on the designer competition, spending my free time working on my designs. After the retest, I submitted my semi-final designs. 5 days passed in the blink of an eye, and I received the notification that I made it to the finals. To celebrate, I invited Linda and a few colleagues over for dinner. While I was preparing the dishes, Luis rang the doorbell. When I opened the door, Luis handed me a box. "I bought this from a Michelin restaurant. It's all your favorite food. I've told you many times. I don't need it. Stop wasting your time." Luis gave a faint smile. "Katarina, is it that no matter what I do, you won't forgive me? I'm moving forward. I hope you can do the same." Luis stood in silence for a moment. "Next month, it's Mom's Memorial Day. Are you coming back?" 2 years ago, I didn't go to Mom's Memorial Day, and I'm sorry. For a moment, I was lost in thought, remembering the phone call I made to Luis that day. He would rather spend time with Rose and her mother, watching the pets give birth, than be with his mother on her Memorial Day. Thankfully, Mom still had me, even in another country. I would visit her grave often. Of course, I would go back for this year's Memorial Day. I shook my head. "Don't apologize to me. You should apologize to Mom." Luis said sorry again and left with the things in his hand. Linda walked over and gently put her hand on my shoulder. "Another one of your admirers?" "No, just someone I knew in the past." Seeing my change in expression, Linda didn't press further, instead asking about the competition's next steps. Talking about the competition, the cloud in my heart cleared. I quickly forgot about the old troubles and old people. On the day of the final, I wore a black little dress and sat in the audience. Luis was in a suit, sitting in the crowd. Jacob didn't come. When the host announced my name, there was a brief silence in the room. Then, thunderous applause. I stood up under the attention of thousands, slowly walking up to the stage, and personally received the honor that should have been mine 2 years ago. I thanked my colleagues, Linda for her advice, and my mom in heaven. I didn't mention Luis at all. When I came down from the stage, Luis suddenly rushed over. "Katarina, Jacob was injured by Rose. Do you want to go see him? Is he dead?" "No, but it's serious. I'm not a doctor. It won't make a difference if I go." Luis stood still, silent for a long time. Before Mom's Memorial Day, I had already flown back to my home country. On the day of the memorial, Luis was waiting in the hotel lobby early, ready to take me to Mom's grave. The car stopped outside the cemetery, and Luis and I got out and walked in. He bought a lot of offerings, as if trying to make up for what had been missing that year. On the tombstone, Mom's smile was still warm and loving. The wind lifted my skirt, and holding the trophy in my hands, I softly spoke to Mom. Luis stood silently to the side. When we left, I couldn't help but cry. Luis, with red eyes, asked me, "Sister, is it that no matter what Jacob and I do, you won't forgive us?" I wiped my tears, calmly replying, "I can forgive you, as long as you never bother me again." The suffering of those days, I would never forget, and I would never go back to how things were before. The wounds have healed, but the scars remain. I don't want to waste my life in hatred. So, I have to forget, to look forward, to move forward. The last glimmer of light in Luis's eyes dimmed. He gave a bitter smile. "I understand. I'll pass your message to Jacob." His voice choked. "I'll move away from next door. I won't disturb you again. I want to ask, will you come back in the future? Things in the future are uncertain, but as of now, I haven't thought about coming back. Besides Mom, there's no one in Beijing I miss. Whether I return or not doesn't matter that much anymore." The next morning at 10, I checked out of the hotel and saw Jacob, pale-faced, sitting in a wheelchair in the hotel lobby. His left cheek was bandaged. Rose had scratched him. It wasn't fatal, but it could leave a scar. Katarina. He wore a hospital gown under a jacket, looking thin and exhausted. I didn't stop walking. Jacob had someone push him and blocked me in front. "Katarina, I have something to say. I promise. After this, I'll never bother you again." I stopped, nodded to him. "I hope you keep your word. Luis talked to me yesterday." Jacob swallowed the dryness in his throat. "Katarina, will you ever give me another chance?" "Yes," I answered without hesitation. "If possible, I hope I never have to see you again." Jacob stared at me for a long time, then finally gave a bitter smile and nodded. "I understand, Katarina. I promise. I won't bother you anymore. But, before we part, can you let me hug you one last time?" "No." I shook my head coldly. "This is it, Jacob. I hope we never meet again." I turned and left. The spring wind was blowing, but leaves were falling from the branches. The leaves spiraled down and landed on the ground, only to be stepped on by someone, making a faint sound. No one cared. No one noticed. Back at the company, I threw myself into work. Because of the prestigious award, my salary increased, and my work became busier than before. On the second day at work, Luis moved away from next door and returned to Beijing. The house was temporarily vacant. A year later, a young man moved into the house. His name was Angelo, a humorous and handsome man. After getting to know him a bit, I found out that he worked at the same company. The two companies were not far from each other, and our working hours were the same, so we often bumped into each other. A few months later, he confessed his feelings for me. I didn't agree. Angelo didn't give up. He was very considerate, never putting me in a difficult position, and I enjoyed spending time with him. But it wasn't yet time to start a relationship. 2 more years passed. During Chinese New Year, I learned from Luis that Rose's mother had passed away last month. Rose, who had been convicted of attempted murder, was sentenced to 9 years in prison. The cold wind howled, but I didn't feel cold. Luis babbled on, but didn't mention Jacob. I heard that Jacob had been hospitalized twice in the last year for gastric bleeding. Even in the hospital, he couldn't stop drinking. But all of that no longer concerned me. After talking about Rose's mother, Luis mustered up the courage to ask, "Katarina, will you come home for New Year?" "No, I'm doing fine here. 2 months ago, I won another trophy. Beijing wasn't worth longing for. Achieving bigger accomplishments through hard work was my current pursuit." Walking outdoors, soaking in the rare winter sunshine, I felt every pore on my body relax. Up ahead, Angelo stood in the sunlight, his hair glowing golden, and his already handsome face became even more striking. My heart skipped a beat. I put away my phone and waved at Angelo, who was waiting for me. He smiled and walked toward me, his eyes reflecting my figure. Actually, having a relationship seemed nice too.